why. Actually, sometimes in concert, I've seen CeeLo perform a lot. It's crazy.
It's to unlock the door. For those around me criticize and sleep. And touch your face again. My voice. We have a little crazy as we speak. But we're never gonna survive. We have a little.
Music is a beautiful woman in her prime. Music is a scrub woman, clearing away the dirt and grime. Music is a girl child, simple, sweet, and beaming. 1,000 years old, cold as sleet. It's not really a book to read. It's a book to glance through. See how short it's like little mini essays. You know, little anecdotes more than anything else. These pictures. I mean, but you know, what kind of book has your tour itinerary in it? Honors and awards, okay, that's cool. You gotta have that. Notes on the State Department tour in 1963. I mean, you know, huh? It's not that actually personally revealing. It's sort of a creation of his persona, which is the elegant man of jazz. You know, New York City, New York City, New York City Diddy. Not P. Diddy. I mean, I have this book in hardcover, which is very nice. The pictures are nice. I mean, but it's not a really deep autobiography or very self-revealing of Duke's true, because it's hard to imagine Duke's true self was as flippant as this book is. Well, the first record I really remember liking was Charlie Brown by the Coasters. He walks through the classroom, cool and slow. Who calls the English teacher daddy-o? Charlie Brown. So that was a first record I consciously remember singing along to in the house. I liked Mr. Postman by the Marvelettes. Please, Mr. Postman. But so I was a fan of accessible pop songs, even as a child. My first record I actually had my mother buy for me was 45, A Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison. Pretty woman walking down the... I like that part. Do 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 do. Mercy. Excuse me a second. So I remember sitting over, my mother bought it for me on Picken Avenue, which was the main shopping area. And I remember looking over, watching it spin around. I'm from the era of 45s. My mother was a big collector. She was a big dance person. She used to have parties. I used to call them rum and coke parties because she used to drink Bacardi rum with a little Coca-Cola. Soften it up. That was before she went into Kahlua and cream, you know, the evolution. She liked sweet drinks. But she'd have these parties and there were people dancing, and I would sneak around the corner and watch them dance, you know. The blue, Stax was blue label, Atlantic was red and black, Motown was blue and white. What other labels do I remember? Those are the big ones because she mostly listened to Stax, or Atlantic, or Motown, if you were, you know, that's what you listened to. I mean, there were other, Gordy, which was a label of Motown, was brown and yellow. No, brown and sort of orange yellow. So but that's what we listened to, you know. Marvelettes, Marvin Gaye, Otis Redding. Otis Redding was my mother's personal savior. She loved Otis Redding. She went to see him a couple of times. Couldn't take me. Couldn't let kids. Because kids didn't go to those shows. Those were adult shows. So, Al Green was big. Al Green, Gladys Knight. They were gods in my house. Well, the 45 started because I was always a kid who was very curious. And I began reading the information on the label. I was familiar with Holland Dozier Holland and Smokey Robinson and Steve Cropper and all the names on the back of these 45s who wrote the songs, you know. So I became very curious about that. And over time, I began reading album covers. And so over as an adolescent into my teenage years, I became very curious about the people behind these records I really liked. And then I began buying books on music, especially starting in high school, and really seriously in college. And I sort of self-educated myself actually in the history of the music by reading anything I get my hands on. And there wasn't really a lot on black music, quite honestly. And it was a lot on jazz. Wasn't really a lot on R&B. There was a lot on rock. There was a lot of jazz. There wasn't a lot on popular black music. And in what was written, I didn't really find that informative. But that's what it was. There were some good publications from England, like Black Music Magazine, which I read, and a couple of books. So I sort of became really interested in this whole world behind the 45s and behind the vinyl. And, over time became more and more interested in writing about it. Well, the two books that are the backbone of my career, so to speak, I believe, are Greil Marcus's Mystery Train, which is one of the great books about American popular music. Particularly, it introduced me to Robert Johnson, who I'd never heard of, through that book. And then I went and got the records after I read the book. So he really introduced me to Robert Johnson. Those records are chilling and beautiful and powerful and strange. So Robert Johnson, and then Leroy Jones's book, Blues People, through which I really got introduced to Coltrane particularly. There's a lot of Coltrane and sort of Miles to some degree, and Ellington to some degree, but it really, again, introduced more through the books that led me to the records. I like blues too, and the blues conversation. I used to listen to a lot of B.B. King, a lot of Robert Johnson, Albert Collins, Albert King. Muddy Waters was a revelation. Loved Muddy Waters. Howlin' Wolf. I mean, that's a whole world of music which people have sort of got lost because they write about Motown, and Motown was a huge force. But Chuck Berry, I really was amazed. I hadn't really trying to understand Chuck Berry. How does this black guy start rock and roll? Because I was sort of educating myself, and then I realized that rock was just a word to characterize almost a way of marketing music or presenting music around white racism. So Chuck Berry and Bill Diddley and that whole, and the connections between those musicians and the blues musicians, which was pretty intimate. I mean, the same guys, Willie Dixon would have played bass on the Muddy Waters record and could have played bass on the Chuck Berry record. So a lot of the lines that blur, these words that blur, they blur the real subtle distinctions. I mean, people say R&B or hip hop, but today the two things are so intertwined. It's hard to say, it's Usher. Usher sings, but is he making R&B? His records are as influenced by hip hop production as R&B production, So those words we use, that writers use actually, are often illusions. Well, music got me into film. It's a long story, but I moved around the corner from Spike Lee in 85, 84, 85, I think. Summer 85. And I knew him because I was writing for Billboard. And I'd met him through a girl, actually. But I never forget the time I really remember connecting to Spike. I'd written an article on Russell Simmons in the Village Voice in 1985. And I got a call from Spike. Nelson, this is Spike. Saw your piece on Russell Simmons. I said, yeah, Spike. Yeah, I'm moving around. I'm moving to Fort Greene in a couple of days. Yeah, where? Blah, blah, blah. That's around the corner from my house. Being inspired is not enough. Quincy Jones told me this one time, actually. This is a good story. Quincy Jones said, so I asked him, Quincy, okay, you work with all these great singers, blah, 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 blah. How come Michael Jackson is so successful? What separates him from other people you work with? And he said, ass power. He said Michael had the ability to come in the studio and he would do the lead vocal. And then he would do the background vocals. Then he would sit and stack the harmonies on the background vocals so that the record had like 3 or 4 different levels to it. That's when he would leave. Most singers he worked with, if you could get the lead vocal out of them, and they'd stay and they wouldn't want to go to the dope man or whatever and get high, go to party, that was something. Michael had that ability to focus on his work and take whatever he had to the highest level he could take it. And that's why he always felt that Michael's records were more creative and very, very detailed. When you listen to Michael's records now, there's like a lot of little things, and Michael's doing all kinds of little woo thing. I mean, it's really, really ear candy. Your earphones are full. So ass power, and I always believed in that, and that's been a big thing for me, is ass power. Because so Nelson, you've written all these books, and how do you do that? I sit my ass down, and I get it done. It's not about me being fly. It's not about me being whatever. Even when I go out, I know people. I hung out with a lot at all the clubs, but you know what? There's still like an hour left, 2:00. I usually leave by 2:00 because if I still go, I can still get work done till 3 and go to sleep and still get up and have a day. Once you stay past 3:00, it's no morning for you. You're through it's 1:00 is breakfast, and I knew that even when I was young. And that's why I was able to get a lot of stuff done. Even though I hung out with a lot of people who hung out, and I would go to all the things. I always had a very clear sense of when I needed to go back and get what I need to get done. So ass power is big. And the other thing is the subconscious. And this is, may sound weird, but one reason I've been so productive is I let my subconscious work for me. And that is to say that it's not about me sitting, and I say ass, because this is the other part of ass power. It's not about me just sitting there and grinding it out. It's like, okay, I'm writing a script about HIV infection. So it's not about me sitting around and reading. I mean, I read all the books. I read interviews I've done, but it doesn't mean I just go ahead and write. Then I have to sit back. I just let it sit there for a minute. And I might go out. I might have dinner with you. I might go to a movie. But actually, that's still going around. It's every now and then it pops up in my mind, conscience. And then when I wake up, either that night or so often now, when I wake up in the morning, I might wake up at 7:30. Even have to be up till 9:00, and I'll write for 90 minutes. And it'll just be really fresh, and it'll just pop out. And that's my subconscious working for me. And all like my mind has been thinking and analyzing it back here somewhere, and then it tells me the answer to my question. And that's really big. And I think actually I learned a lot of that through yoga as well. You still your mind, and you just relax. If it's really important to you, your mind is working on it already. It's really sort of working on it. You just have to let your mind do that. And I think that's the biggest thing. So the ass power and those things are combined, though, because once the subconscious kicks in, then you have to execute. You know what I mean? So the two things will hand in. There's discipline, and then there's also this kind of mystical quality. I mean, I'm writing stuff sometimes, and it'll an hour or 2 hours will go by. I'm like, I don't know how I got that. It's like God touched me. Something came in my head. It came out, and I don't know how I did. I look at books I write. I look at books I've written. I look at the Motown book I wrote, some like, how did I do that? I don't know how I did that. I can intellectually remember writing pieces of paper and having charts and having these interviews and tapes, but I cannot tell you actually how did I go from this idea to this idea to this idea. Why did I use that quote there? How did that whole process happen? I don't know. That happened on another level.